I must have been about 9 years old the first time I ever played Fallout 3. I hadn't played 1 or 2, nor had I played that many video games to begin with. But here I was, deep underground in Vault 101, confined within cold metal walls and illuminated by unpleasant fluorescent lights. It was claustrophobic and ugly, and I mean that in the best possible way. Chaos erupted, and there I was, shooting giant irradiated cockroaches and messing around with the severed head of a security guard I killed. My younger self would have been fully on board if the rest of the game was set inside the oppressive walls of this strange, unsettling vault. But that wasn't the case, and what lay beyond had a profound impact on me. When I emerged into the capital wasteland, I stepped foot into a world annihilated by nukes. What I would later come to find out was the devastating end result of the resource wars between the USA and China. 9-year-old me didn't understand it at the time, but it's a satirical setting that heavily draws from the Cold War, playing on its atomic anxieties, the fallacy of the American dream, fervent nationalism, and the anti-communist hysteria that characterized that period. Fallout's mascot, the Vault Boy, is a pastiche of the many informational cartoons of the era centered around surviving nuclear attacks. Civil defense films like Duck and Cover gloss over the terrifying threat of annihilation with cheerful animated characters and naively hopeful misinformation about the devastation. Believe it or not, hiding under your desk at school will not protect you against a nuclear blast. But you'll feel a lot better about your odds of survival if you're told that by Bert the Turtle. As Todd Howard of Bethesda Game Studios explains, Vault Boy himself is the epitome of this optimism and adds just the right kind of humor at the right moments. We don't really use jokes, it's more about the juxtaposition of optimism versus the environment and the world that you see. You're in the middle of a brutal firefight in the inhospitable, super mutant-infested ruins of the National Mall, and you flip open your Pip-Boy device to see a happy cartoon smiling at you, as if to say everything is going to be all right. Of course, it's not. That irony is where Fallout's satire thrives, and it's used to great effect in the world around you. The idealized, retro-futuristic vision of a golden age is strongly contrasted with the far more real nuclear hellscape behind it, serving as a reminder of the fallaciousness of that ideology and the dangers it brings about. It's a little something you may have heard of called environmental storytelling. The alleged indisputable greatness of the US of A is proven wrong when all you see of it are the relics it left behind. Setting the game in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, really pushes this visual metaphor to the forefront. The ruined Washington Monument evokes Shelley's sonnet Ozymandias, a testament to might and power, now a colossal wreck in a boundless and bare wasteland. The game has a strong fascination with exposing the hollowness of the idyllic American dream, and to me, there's no better example than Tranquility Lane. It's the quintessential all-American suburbia, the kind you'd see represented in programs like Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver, monochromatic and all. The reality, however, is that Tranquility Lane is a computer simulation run by a psychotic vault tech scientist, and the inhabitants are all vault dwellers trapped within it. The picturesque American suburbia of the 1950s is literally an illusion. Subtext. This extends beyond the allegorical as well. On dilapidated highways in the wasteland are trucks used to transport Chinese-American citizens to internment camps, echoing the real-world treatment of Japanese-American citizens during World War II. Additionally, throughout the game's story, it's revealed that the government was subjecting unwitting participants to cruel genetic experiments. Despite appearances, the America before the bombs was no paradise. Those that have played the earlier Fallouts know that this critique of America was present since the very first installment. The opening cutscene of the original game shows that the United States has annexed Canada, and its military is executing dissenters on national television. Fallout 2's main enemy faction is the Enclave, the last vestiges of the US government. The Enclave's vice president, Daniel Byrd, is a bumbling, brain-dead parody of the real-life Republican vice president, Dan Quayle. Republicans understand the importance of bondage between a mother and child, he tells us in a Freudian slip directly lifted from VP Quayle. That's the key to the solution of all of our problems. We need a return to family values. The Enclave is shown brutally murdering a family in the opening, by the way. Fallout 2 making the United States of America the comically evil villains was a statement. Since I hadn't played Fallout 2, my introduction to the Enclave was here in the capital wasteland, when a floating robot passed by playing patriotic tunes and pre-recorded propaganda pledging to restore America to its former glory. This was Enclave Radio.
We will rebuild the American family as it was meant to be.
The voice, identifying himself as President John Henry Eden, speaks in ridiculously over-the-top patriotic rhetoric. In his broadcasts, he tells anecdotes about growing up in rural Kentucky and bringing back America's great national pastime,
baseball.
Despite Eden's friendly public-facing demeanor, the Enclave are actively hostile, thwarting our group's efforts to bring clean water to everyone in the wasteland. Deep inside their secret facility in Raven Rock, it's revealed that President Eden isn't even a real person. It's a computer with a mission to exterminate anyone the Enclave deems impure. Eden doesn't have any real connection to the American experience. He's a robot. His broadcasts talking about baseball and his rural upbringing were all completely fabricated. He disguised his sinister intentions with empty, patriotic platitudes, pandering to those longing to return to the America of the past, a past that isn't real in the first place. In a sequence that burned itself into my young brain, we fight back against the Enclave by reprogramming a massive pre-war machine called Liberty Prime, originally intended to battle the invading Chinese army in Alaska.
Initiating Directive 7395. Destroy all communists.
Liberty Prime is a mindless automaton, programmed to shout jingoistic slogans as it throws mini-nukes across the battlefield like footballs. It's as much of a tool of propaganda as it is a tool of destruction.
Communism is the very definition of failure.
It's clearly mocking the Red Scare, specifically figures like Senator McCarthy, who baselessly accused anyone left-wing of being a secret communist agent attempting to undermine the United States. It's important that, like McCarthy, Liberty Prime designates people as communists that definitely aren't. The word communist has lost any real meaning. It's used as an insult, a slur. It's a synonym for the enemy. Nothing more than a label used to create a hard line between us and them.
Democracy is truth. Communism is death.
I don't know when I fully grasped what Fallout 3 was doing, but eventually I did, and the satirical nature of the game's setting became my favorite aspect of it. Over the next few years, Fallout became a part of my personality. High school came around, and I always paid closer attention when material from the Cold War made its way into the curriculum. Those years were also a very significant time for my political development, as the run-up to the 2016 election kicked off and dominated much of the American zeitgeist. As the wild and often absurd race for the Republican nominee narrowed down to its frontrunner, I distinctly remember thinking, "Oh, this feels like Fallout 3.
The United States was great once, and it can be again.
We will make America great again.
These radical malcontents.
The radical left.
These agitators.
The agitators.
Anarchistic ruffians.
The anarchists.
Communists detected on American soil.
This socialist/communist.
The ridiculous displays of patriotism, the talk of restoring America to its former glory, romanticizing the 50s as if it was a golden age while ignoring the atrocities, the performative focus on family values, the baseless accusations of communism. I had seen this all before in the capital wasteland. This is how the bad guys talk. I joked with friends at lunch comparing Donald Trump to the Enclave, about how he sure as hell would have liked a Liberty Prime of his own. I didn't think much of it at the time, but Fallout satire influenced my worldview. Here I am now, nearly a decade later, and it feels a bit silly admitting that a video game could have such an effect. We like to reassure ourselves that we're smart and we can understand there's a clear separation between reality and fiction. But it's not about confusing reality with fiction. It's the purpose of art to help us see the world in a different way. And good art sticks with us. In our formative years, it can help shape the person we'll become. As a 16-year-old boy who played video games and watched YouTube in 2016, I was in the primary demographic of a massive right-wing disinformation campaign that pervaded the internet. Regretfully, some of it did affect me, and I held some beliefs back then that I look back on now and shake my head in embarrassment over. Despite that, I never fell for Trumpism like I watched some of my peers do right before my eyes. From the beginning, I saw it for what it was. After all, I'm not going to side with the Enclave. Am I saying that Fallout 3 single-handedly saved me from falling into the alt-right pipeline? Of course not. But at a young age, it made me interested in that period of history and the lessons to take away from it. It told me to be critical of American institutions and those claiming to uphold them. It taught me to be wary of politicians talking about returning America to its former glory, because that former glory never really existed. It was my first real exposure to these reactionary views and rhetoric, and it was a rebuttal to them. It ridiculed people with those viewpoints, and that was cemented into my mind after years of playing. It speaks not just to the power of satire, but the effectiveness of Fallout satire as well. In recent years, Fallout 3 has fallen to the wayside due to newer entries in the franchise improving on its formula. But I'll always have a special place in my heart for the game that let the 9-year-old on the couch with a controller in his hand battle the ultra-nationalist contingent of the US government and discover why that ideology is bad for America. Well, okay, maybe I was 10 or 11 by then. It took me a while to get through the game. I wasn't very good. Truth be told, even at 24 years old, there are still times when I see the damage caused by this administration and think to myself, oh, this feels like Fallout 3.
The Enclave will restore peace, order, and prosperity to this great nation. And those who oppose us will be removed forever. Until we meet again, this is your president, John Henry Eden, signing off.